Here, one early February day, is the Marblehead Little Theatre in Marblehead, Massachusetts. Although MLT's been performing since 1955, the company didn't get a permanent home until 1999, when the town's Board of Supervisors awarded them the old firehouse, painstakingly converted into a perfect black box. Here's Technical Director Andy Barnett. Here's our productions front of house manager Vicky Stavaker. Here's our soprano, Julianne Gearhart. And here are our boys, standing with Julianne, Elias Alexander, and seated at the keyboard, Neil Pearlman. We describe Love Scotland, our midwinter entertainment for Valentine's Day, as music for brave hearts. There have been 3 so far. This, the middle one, is here presented complete as it happened on Saturday, February the 9th, 2019. Perhaps you were there.
How do you feel
Perhaps
about this red light?
you'll come and join us for Love Scotland 4 on Valentine's Weekend 2022.
Welcome to Marblehead Little Theatre. Glad to have you all here and to Love Scotland Part 2.
My very heart, I can die.
coming back for a second helping of rich Scottish pudding. We hope you'll enjoy it just as much as the first. And may I just tell you that to wash it down, we've got some very, very good Scottish beer, which will be on sale. So I'd like to introduce our players. And first of all, with that wonderful voice, our beloved singer, all the way from everywhere, really. She comes to us from the world of international opera. But she is a Marbleheader, and I do mean that in the correct sense. Julianne Gearhart. On the Ullen pipes, which as you'll observe are different from the old standard throw 'em over your shoulder pipes that guys in big hats generally play. These are played by squeezing them. Watch Elias's elbow, and you'll see how much air he's actually putting through these things. He's got a very strong left arm. So Elias Alexander, who plays the Ullen pipes, the whistle, the guitar, the fiddle, and much else, but we'll only see these 4 instruments on display tonight. Here's Elias. And on the keyboards, our patient and forgiving accompanist, who just got here from the West Coast where he's been on tour, and we don't know why he plays with us, to be perfectly honest. But it's too late now, and you're here, and if you see him go, stop him if you would mind. Neil Pearlman.
Perhaps I should have mentioned that they both play in an Afro-Celtic funk rock band. But that didn't seem relevant at the time. This is a poem by Edwin Muir called Scotland's Winter. Now the ice lays its smooth claws on the sill. The sun looks over the hill, helmed in his winter casket, and sweeps his Arctic sword across the sky. The water at the mill sounds more hoarse and dull. The miller's daughter, walking by with her frozen fingers soldered to her basket, seems to be knocking upon 100 leagues of floor with her light heels, and mocking Percy and Douglas dead, and Bruce on his burial bed, where he lies white as May, with wars, leprosy, and all the kings before this land was kingless, and all the songs before this land was songless. This land, with its dead and living, awaits the judgment day. So Scots, you see, have a talent for remembering, and if you scratch a Scot, particularly if you beat a Scot at football, he's likely to say, remember Bannockburn. And we all remember Bannockburn, of course, because it was in 1314, and that's only 705 years ago, which is very recent, really. And that's when our greatest of all Scottish leaders, Robert the Bruce, defeated King Edward II of England, and never forget it, at Bannockburn, which is a boggy plain outside Stirling, and you can still see it to this day from the M9 motorway as it winds its way around Stirling on its way to Perth. 7 years later, in 1320, King Robert signed the Declaration of Arbroath, and it, with all its seals and its ribbons, it looks so like another declaration that we're much more familiar with. But the purpose was the same. This was a letter to the Pope to say, Scotland is an independent nation. We deserve to be treated as such. We particularly deserve to be treated as such by the southern neighbour. And it kind of, you know, the relationship was a bit rocky for hundreds and hundreds of years until 1603, which I can't remember how long ago that is, but as you can tell, it's not really so long ago. 1603, and it sounds like a win. King James VI of Scotland is made King James I of Scotland and England and Wales and as much of Ireland as they can keep under the heel by force, which is kind of the way to this day, really. So that works for a while, but then in 1707, a bunch of very broke Scottish landlords persuade the Scottish Parliament to up sticks and move lock, stock and barrel to the flesh pots of London and Westminster, and all is lost, quite honestly. That's the union of the parliaments, and it's a moment that lives in infamy. And 80 years later, the poet Robert Burns looked back on it with scorn, and he sang about it, he wrote about it in this wonderful and very heart-rending piece of work. And the phrase could apply to parliamentarians to this very day. Such a parcel of rogues in a nation.
How's that go? It's a funny beginning. Farewell to our Scottish fame. Farewell our ancient glory. Farewell into our Scottish name. Set famed in martial story. Now songs o'er the Solway sand,
bleak ages is wrought now by a coward few, for hireling traitors' wages. The English steel we could disdain, secure in valor station, but English gold has been our bane. Such a parcel arose in the nation. Oh, would that I had seen a day when treason us could sell us. My old grey head had lain in clay, with Bruce and loyal Wallace. But pith and power till my last hour, I'll make this declaration: we are bought and sold for English gold. Such a parcel arose in the nation.
Love of the idea of honour and truth and beauty, and most of all the land, brings out kind of innermost longing in us all. And Elias is now going to sing for us the greatest of all contemporary songs about Scotland, Dougie MacLean's Caledonia.
I don't know if you can see the changes that have come over me in these last few days. I've been afraid that I might drift away, so I've been telling old stories, singing songs that make me think about where I came from. That's the reason why I seem so far away today. Let me tell you that I love you, that I think about you all the time. Caledonia, you're calling. Now I'm going home. If I should become a stranger, you know that it would make me more than sad. Caledonia's been everything I've ever had. Well, I have moved, I've kept on moving, proved the points that I needed proving. I've lost the friends that I needed losing, found others on the way. And I have kissed the ladies and left them crying Stolen dreams, yes, there's no denying. I've travelled hard, sometimes with conscience fine, somewhere with the wind. Let me tell you that I love you, that I think about you all the time. Caledonia, you're calling me. Now I'm going home. And if I should become a stranger, you know that it would make me more than sad. Caledonia's been everything I've ever had. So now I'm sitting here before the fire, the empty room, the forest fire, flames that couldn't get any higher. Well, they've withered now, they've gone, and I am steady thinking my way is clear. I know what I will do tomorrow, when the hands are shaking and the kisses blown, I will disappear. So let me tell you that I love you, that I think about you all the time. Caledonia, you're calling me. Now I'm going. If I should become a stranger, you know that it would make me more than sad. Caledonia's been everything I've ever had. Say, Caledonia's been everything I've ever had.
Dougie MacLean was born and still lives in the beautiful village of Dunkeld, which is some 12 miles north of where I was born in the city of Perth. And yet there's a gulf of language that separates us. We met when I went to interview him about 16 years ago now, and he was just explaining that his father came from northwest Perthshire, and his first language was Gaelic, and he came to Dunkeld still speaking Gaelic. And that's the difference, because my father spoke English, or Scots. And as far back as the time of Robert the Bruce, the language of people in Perth and to the east was always known as English. So there's a great difference of language. And that's the rather lovely thing about it, because Gaelic haunts the people who do speak it, and it worries the people who don't speak it, because they haven't a clue what's going on. Elias will now sing Ian MacArthur's Smearach Clandonald, the mavis of Clandonald, and a mavis is a thrush. Every bird praises its own land, why shouldn't I? And you can just imagine that proud mavis singing there. The mavis is singing on Table Beach on the tiny island of Tarancy, just west of the Isle of Harris in the Outer Hebrides. It's a nice coincidence in our language that the Outer Hebrides and outer space share the same adjective, because I really like nowhere else on earth. And if you can go within a few miles from this beautiful beach to that kind of rocky outcrop and feel that you are in a kind of blasted wilderness, and people love it. It's just the best. So, Elias is now going to sing for us a lovely song called Avari Boya, to my beautiful Mary. It was written by a Gaelic-speaking shoemaker called Alexander Stewart, who lived all his life in Glenlyon, which is just to the southwest of the epic centre of the universe, Perth. And Glenlyon is the view from the first tee on a very fine golf course, another reason to go, a very fine golf course, which you may have just heard, called Glen Eagles.
Avadi voya, savadi gugula, avadi voya, good morgen, avadi voya, good to Allah. Saga min rana undar Avadi voya Gurtrik mi kain yacha Art man vana Get a huling Gach kenjen sua It yevai oya Gine mos space Struach nach rami Small vati bo Aunen glianen Fo eskjoe Geburimis Hangren jorpa Chania in park Ach vova Avadi voya Savadi gu Avadi voya Good morning Avadi voya Good to che peacciam sambi corni se moguro ho fatte spiauni ambi garçons et ma
Alexander Stewart, who wrote that song, also wrote A History of a Highland Parish, and it includes the lengths to tales about all sorts of things, but tales of the lengths to which people would go to conceal the illicit trade in whiskey, because at that time, illicit stills were all over Scotland, and the excisemen were trying to hunt them down because there was very high duty on whiskey. They weren't very successful. And one of the dodges that they came up with was they'd get an old cart and they'd put barrels in the base of the cart, you know, it's the old false bottom trick. And then they'd put some straw on the floorboards, and then they'd put an old man on the straw, and it was like some old man, you know, pulled off the street. And the closer to death, the better, to be quite honest. So that it looked as if they were just going to kind of take him straight to the graveyard. So anyway, such an old man is lying on the straw, and they're carting him off to Stirling or somewhere like that to sell the whiskey. When the excisemen catch up with them, and they get a look at him, and he goes, "Oh, poor old man, oh, he's not well at all, is he?" "Oh, no, certainly not." And of course, they're all speaking Gaelic, the excisemen are speaking English. So the excisemen say, "What's wrong with him?" And they say, "Oh, he's got to do leask," which is to say, he's wicked lazy, you know. The customs man, anyway, is none the wiser. When spring comes to Scotland, it comes gently. And although it may be punctuated by the occasional gale or late snowfly, it still comes about a month before it comes here. And the snowdrops and the crocuses that peep up in February are succeeded by the wild daffodils and the primroses in March. And then, by the end of May, the carpets of wild bluebells. I strongly recommend that you don't visit before the end of May, but squeeze it all in to a lovely visit between about the end of May and the middle of June, and you can still get back here for some of the good weather too. Elias will now sing for us Dougie MacLean's version of Robert Tannehill's poem, Gloomy Winter's New a War.
Gloomy winters new a war, soft the westland breezes blow, on the parks or Stanley Shaw, the mavis sings full cheery ho. Sweet the crawflower's early bell, Dexclinifer's dewy dell, blooming like thy bonny self, my young, my heartless dearie, oh. Trees may bud and birds may sing, flowers may bloom and verdure spring, but joy to me they cannot bring, unless we heed my dearie, oh. Sweet the crawflower's early bell, Dexclinifer's dewy dell, blooming like thy bonny self, my young, my heartless dearie, oh. Round the sylvan fairy nooks, fairy brackens fringe the rocks, neath their brave the barley jokes, and ill the thing is cheery. Come, my lassie, let us stray o'er Glencairloch sunny grey, and blithely spend the golden day midst joy that's never weary. Trees may bud and birds may sing, flowers may bloom and verdure spring. Joy to me they cannot bring unless we unite eerie.
Really is a lovely song, isn't it? And it includes some Scottish words. A crawflower turns out to be a wood hyacinth, and a lavrock is a skylark. And a skylark is the most wonderful bird, I think, I was associated with Scottish fields, because you walk across a stubble field and you'll hear this bird, and it's got a very, very high flight pattern. It's a way up there, it's a piping song, and it sees you, and then you may be walking too close to its nest, in which case it'll come right down, and then it kind of hovers along the ground, and or just above the ground, and it pretends to have a broken wing. It's an amazing act, because it's trying to lead you away from the nest, which is on the ground. But this is behaviour, you know, that's ingrained in generations of skylarks. So anyway, a lavrock is a skylark, and a burnie-jouk is a babbling burn, and a sock is a willow. So I know you'll remember all that, because we'll be asking you later. Now, water is an enduring feature of the Scottish landscape, and the water that you would have seen in the poster is the Reekie Linn, which is a wonderful waterfall outside Alyth, and this picture was actually taken just before Christmas, and so it was reached by a fairly muddy path, but lots and lots of water in it. And Scotland's got lots of little hidden treats like that when you really look for it. Alyth is about an hour north of Perth, strangely enough. And all roads, you know, lead to Perth. That's what we were told when I was in school. Perth is a route centre. And Perth was actually the medieval capital of Scotland because of this sort of ease of travel. And it probably would have been the capital still had we not killed King James I, which was a bit of a mistake in retrospect. So, the River Tay runs through Perth and all the way down to Dundee, and it was the subject of a great poem, not by McGonagall, but we always thought it was by McGonagall, who was the world's worst poet, who also is Scottish. And the Tay, the silvery Tay, it runs to Dundee and back each day. That was a poem that we all learned. But my friends from school would come back after the summer holidays with great rope burns and scarred hands, because they'd been hauling in these heavy, heavy nets with salmon in them. The Tay is a great salmon river, and they'd been bringing in the salmon and putting it in crates and sending crates off by train to London, and there the salmon would be served up at the finest restaurants for the rich people to eat, as we always thought of, and everybody was rich in London. And then there's the sea that surrounds the island. On the east is the grey North Sea, and then on the west is the Atlantic, and the little bit of the Atlantic that separates the mainland of Scotland from the Outer Hebrides is called the Minch, and that's where a very, very romantic story occurs, because in 1746, Prince Charles Edward Stuart, who wanted to restore the Stuart monarchy, pitches up in South Uist on the Outer Hebrides. Now, if you've seen the movie The Favourite, you know that the Stuart monarchy came to an end with Queen Anne, and you perhaps understand why if you've seen The Favourite. So, Charles Edward and his father, whose name is James, is also, they're in France, but they would love to come back. And there's been a failed attempt at revolution in 1715 and 1745. Bonnie Prince Charlie, as we know him, tried again and failed spectacularly at Culloden. And Culloden was a tragic battle because it ended up in many, many deaths of very fine young men and repression of the Highlands, which lasted for almost 100 years. So Charlie is in retreat. He ends up in South Uist, and who should he meet but Flora? Now, Flora MacDonald is one of these outstanding people. You know, if she was here today, she would be, she'd be Oprah Winfrey or something like that. She's amazing. So she finds out that Charlie's in a bit of a pickle because he's in South Uist and France is that way. You know, it's kind of the wrong direction. So she gets a boat from her dad and with 6 boatmen takes him over to Skye and gives us a wonderful, wonderful excuse for a song. Charlie is dressed as an Irish washerwoman, which does not appear in the words of the song, which were set by a baronet in the 19th century to a wonderful, wonderful tune by Anne Campbell MacLeod. Here it is, the Skye Boat Song.
Speed, bonny boat, like a bird on the wing, onward the sailors cry. Carry the lad that's born to be king over the sea to sky. Loud the winds howl, loud the
situation once again. Maybe. But not yet. And so, in the meantime, which for Scots means hundreds of years, the Scots have amused themselves by not taking anything too seriously, especially love. For our delight, Miss Gearhart will now sing a nonsense song from the rich tradition of Fife, which was collected by the late great Scots singer who made many tours over here, Jean Redpath. Jean Redpath got this from her mother, who came from Leven, in the East Neuk of Fife. And the East Neuk is something like the North Shore in that it's very super, but it's very hard to get to, really. And you know you've got there because it's difficult to get back out and you can't find the way. And if you ask the way, everybody says, well, you're asking the way, you should be here anyway. And this is a boy meets girl poem. It's like any other boy meets girl poem, but it does move rather fast. This boy meets a girl on a street in Dundee. He's come up for the day from the fishing village of Crail, which we'll see in a minute. There it is. So he comes up from Crail to Dundee, meets the girl in the street, and the poem or the song proceeds with blinding speed from the street to the girl's sitting room and then to the girl's bedroom. And then there is an intervention. So it's called the Fife Overgate. Don't worry too much about the language. You will understand what's going on, I promise you.
As I went on the overgate, I saw a bonny lass. She winked at me with a tail free. She winked as I went past. With mature in nay, mature and not in luck, mature and not in nay. As I went on the overgate, she chanced to pass me by. She said, "Is a bombrain who lick nicked?" And I said, "My lass, who high?" With mature in nay, mature and not in luck, mature and not in nay. I bought her rum and porter, and I stood her pies and beer. She ate and drank enough to feed an elephant for a year. With mature in nay, mature and not in luck, mature and not in nay. She said, "I've got a little room a wee bit down the barn. It's true as Robbie Barn said, the man was born to marn. With mature in nay, mature and not in luck, mature and not in nay." We went back up the stair again for tout a wee bit drink, when a muckle light knocked upon the door and there wasna time to think. With mature in nay, mature and not in luck, mature and not in nay. It was a big fat bobby gave me by the top of my hair, and he gave me the whirly jiggly doom to the foot of the stair. With mature in nay, mature and not in luck, mature and not in nay. I went back up the stair again for taking all my clays. He said, "Young man, get out of this, for I'll give ye 30 days. With mature in nay, mature and not in luck, mature and not in nay. I said, "I've lost my watch chain, my waistcoat and my purse." She said, "I lost my maidenhead, and that's a damn sight worse." With mature and not in luck, mature and not in nay. So I'll go back to Crail again, contented for to be, with unbroken all my £5 note by the lassie in Dundee. With mature in nay, mature and not in luck, mature and not in nay.
Which brings us then to a song that we all enjoyed so much last year that we thought we'd sing it again. This is about a social phenomenon, and it's intended as a warning to all the sweet and vulnerable young women in our audience. So, Mr. Alexander, Mr. Pearlman, it's all yours.
Well, an old man came courting me, hey, do-be-da-da-dee. An old man came courting me being young. An old man came courting me, he did propose to me. Maids, when you're young, never wed an old man, for he's got no fallorum, fallidum, fallorum. He's got no fallorum, fallidum, falleyo. He's got no fallorum, he's lost his ding-dong. Maids, when you're young, never wed an old man. Well, when we sat down to tea, hey, do-be-da-da-dee. When we down to tea, me being young. Oh, when we sat down to tea, he started teasing me. Maids, when you're young, never wed an old man, for he's got no falorum, fallidum, falorum. He's got no falorum, fallidum, fallidum. He's got no falorum, he's lost his ding dong. Oh, maids, when you're young, never wed an old man. Well, when we went up to bed, hey doobie-dallity, when we went up to bed, me being young. When we went up to bed, he lay as if 'twere dead. Maids, when you're young, never wed an old man, for he's got no falorum, fallidum, falorum. He's got no falorum, fallidum, fallidum. He's got no falorum, he's lost his ding dong. Maids, when you're young, never wed an old man. Well, when he was fast asleep, hey doobie-dallity, when he was fast asleep, me being young. When he was fast asleep, I from his side did creep into the arms of a handsome young man. Now he's got falorum, fallidum, falorum. He's got falorum, fallidum, fallidum. Yes, he's got falorum, he's got a ding-dong. Maids, when you're young, never wed an old man.
Well, thank you so much for your kind attention. It remains just for me to say,
I think that it's time for you to reward yourselves with a little break and some fine Scottish beer. Let me tell you about the fine Scottish beer. It comes from the brewery. It's the best. It's the best. It's really good. Everybody said that last night. I'm surprised there's any left. It's from Innocent Gun. It's their rum cask blood red beer. It's absolutely wonderful, and it's for sale from Vicky at the bargain price of $5. You won't get it cheaper anywhere else. So I want you to know that the Scots are not cheap. This is a gift to you. All we ask is that you tip Vicky and do it generously. And all the money, surprisingly, doesn't go to her, it goes to the musicians. So we'll see you in about 15 minutes' time. Thank you so much. Oh, look, there's a. Oh, there. Well. You weren't expecting this, were you? I hope you enjoyed the beer.
Salamine without the sea, Salamine the Calican, Salamine without the sea, Sting in a valley shore. Salamine without the sea, Salamine the Calican, Salamine without the sea, Sting in a valley shore. Salamine without the sea, Salamine the Calican, Salamine without the sea, Sting in a valley shore. Salamine without the sea, Salamine the Calican, Salamine without the sea, Sting in a valley shore. Salamine without the sea, Salamine the Calican, Salamine without the sea. Without the sea, something 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 without the sea, something
He just mentioned that last night. He thought, oh, we'd better include that in the show. Well, it's awfully nice to have you back with us. And that was, of course, mouth music, the mouth music of the Highlands and the Islands. And when it's sung, sometimes it's a working song, and sometimes it's just for plain old fun. And in that case, it was definitely just for plain old fun. So we're getting kind of to the bit of the show now, which is slightly, for me, self-indulgent. And I think the whole show is very self-indulgent. But every year when I was growing up, they used to have the Mod on Common Gaelic in Perth. And when the people came through for the Mod, there was a certain amount of, out for the day about it. A few years ago, National Theatre of Scotland set a show here called Our Ladies of Perpetual Succour, which was about a bunch of convent girls from Oban who were on the day release to Edinburgh to go to the Mod. And they were determined to do as much damage as they could in the afternoon before they were due to appear on stage in Edinburgh in the evening. It was the most wonderful show. I've been asked by some people, perhaps not you, so if it wasn't you, just talk among yourselves, but I've been asked by some people to talk about what it was like for me growing up, because growing up in Scotland in the 50s wasn't that different from growing up here, except in one respect, because sugar rationing came off in 1955. And I was born in 1953. Consequently, everybody gave me sweets. And I knew every single sweet in the sweet shop between the ages of about 2 and 7. I knew Tobermory tatties. I knew licorice bootlaces. I knew rhubarb rock. I liked lucky bags, because you never quite knew if you got in a lucky bag. I was kind of okay about gobstoppers, but they were very big. And, once you put them in your mouth, you couldn't speak, and that was a bit of a problem for me. Anyway, by the time I was 7, I didn't have an actual tooth left in my head. But it was a lovely way to grow up. We all wore uniforms to school, and this is my sister on her first day at school. And in the background to all this, in our house, were two kinds of music that you're not hearing here tonight. One was band music, and band music was playing virtually all the time on the radio. There was no pop radio in Britain in those days. It was all state-run radio by Big Brother kind of institutions like the BBC. So anyway, the BBC in Scotland played band music incessantly, so you would hear from people like Jimmy Shand. And Jimmy Shand was a great band leader, played the accordion. This is a picture of him. It's actually his statue in his birthplace of Auchtermuchty. And my father's claim to fame, one of them, was that he had met Jimmy Shand, and we were never allowed to forget it. So anyway, there was Jimmy Shand, and there were other people like that too. And our housekeeper, we used to call her, she was the lady who used to look after us when we were sick, because my mother was out teaching, and she would also make us hot lunches when we came running down the hill from school. And I ran down the hill from school to have my hot lunch in 10 minutes, and I ran back up the road to school again. And one day I got there, breathless as usual and ready for lunch. And she said, "Oh, you'll never guess who was just in the kitchen." And she said, "The Alexander brothers and Jimmy Logan." And that was a bit like saying the Everly brothers and Bob Hope and possibly Bing Crosby were all in the kitchen at the same time. And she pointed to the washing machine and she said, Jimmy Logan sat on the washing machine. And I looked at the washing machine with pride for the next few weeks. The first girl I ever kissed went to Australia. I'm not saying it was anything to do with the fact that we kissed. But I was only 10 at the time. And it was very, 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 very innocent, I can tell you that. But I've never really forgotten it. I just discovered, by the way, that she's still alive and living in Australia, so if I'm not here for a week or two, you'll know. That's an awful warning to somebody, particularly across there, who's definitely going to keep the tips now, I think. But I do remember it, in the playground of Perth Junior Academy, as though it was yesterday. Contrary, we weren't an especially musical family. My mother and sister both played the piano and my father had a violin. But at a certain age, it's just nice to have something to blow.
That's him.
see all little boys in Scotland wear kilts. It's the law. You have to. Now, Charles Murray was a poet who wrote in the Scots language in the early part of the 20th century, and his poem, The Whistle, is about a little boy who grows up on a farm, and part of his job is to herd the cattle. And he's bored out of his mind, but one day he cuts a nice whippy bit of willow, and he makes a whistle out of it. He cut a sappy sucker frae the muckle rodden tree, he trimmed it, and he wetted, and he thumped it on his knee. He never heard the chouchet when the harrow broke her eggs. He missed the cragged heron nabbing paddocks in the segs. He forgot to hound the collie at the cattle when they strayed, but you should have seen the whistle that the wee herd made. He wheepled on't at morning and he tweetled on't at nicht. He puffed his freckled cheeks out till his nose sank out of sight. The kye were late for milking when he piped them up and close. The kittlins got his supper side, and he was bedded bose. But he cared na doit nor dockin what they did or thought or said. There was comfort in the whistle that the wee herd made. For lying lang o' mornings he had clawed the cop for weeks, but knew he had his bonnet on afore the leaf had breeks. He was whistling to the porridge that were hottering on the fire. He was whistling o'er the travis to the bailey in the byre. Nae a blackbird nor a mavis that he piping to their trade was a marrow for the whistle that the wee herd made. He tried a march to battle that come dirling through the mist till the halfling squared his shoulders and made up his mind to list. He tried a lilt for words, though he wistna what it meant, but the kitchen lass was laughing and he thought she maybe kent. He got ream and buttered bannocks for the loving lilt he played. Oh, wasn't that a cheery whistle that the wee herd played? But the snaw, it stopped the herding, and the winter brought him dule, when in spite o' hacks and chilblains, he was shod again for school. He couldna soch the catechist, or pipe the rule of three. He was keep it in and lick it when the other loons got free. He often played the truant. 'Twas the only thing he played, for the master burnt the whistle that the wee herd made. Desperately disappointing song, that, isn't it? Better cheer us up. Robbie Burns. You thought you could avoid this. You know, it is possible, if your only exposure to Scottish culture is the sort of January Haggis Fest, in honour of a man who is now 260 years old, to imagine that Robbie Burns invented Scottish culture. Of course he didn't. He just appropriated it. He brought things from the past and made them relevant to the present. And that was a part of his great genius. And one of the things that he did with this song was exactly that. This is a song about a girl who is broken-hearted, and she's just crooning over the love of a man who has left her in the family way and deserted her. And Burns added a new first verse, of which he was terribly proud, and it sees this very, very tenderly from the woman's point of view. But I think it was a little bit of guilt working its way out because, well, I don't really need to say any more about Robert Burns, but this is a wonderful song. When you're a true creative, you just can't stop. So take the example of the Beatles, who in the amazing year after the tragically early death of Brian Epstein in August 1967, cranked out at least 30 songs, most of which made their way onto the White Album. And Giles Martin, who's George Martin's son, and George Martin, as most of you know, lived here in Marblehead on the Neck for a year after the Beatles. But Giles used to say about his father, and he says it in the liner notes to the new re-release of the White Album, he says that his father just couldn't keep up with the prolific energy, the creative impetus of the Beatles. And I think it must have been that way with Burns, because not only was Burns researching old songs like that for the unprecedented effort at musical scholarship called the Scots Musical Museum, he was turning out beautiful lyrical poems which have rarely really been equalled for their simplicity and their beauty, and then occasionally would turn his hand to long narrative masterpieces that were just the thing, and still are just the thing, for a long winter's night inside. And then he'd knock off a few ditties before lunch. And the ditties never actually made it into the Kilmarnock edition. They're the ones that are in this kind of samizdat publication called The Merry Muses of Caledonia. And most of them are really, they're a bit puerile, to be perfectly honest, but one of them is reasonably innocent. And so here we go. Roseberry to his lady says, my hinny and my sucker, oh, shall we do that thing ye ken, or shall we tak our supper? We a riddle camera, we a foul camera, we a riddle camerandi, we modest face, say full grace, replied the bonny lady, my noble lord, day as ye please, but supper is nae ready. We a riddle camera, we a foul camera, we a riddle camerandi. I appreciate that was as much as they would let me do. Burns composed the words to this next song, Corn Rigs, in 1782. You can't assume that he didn't just make up the character of Anne, but that really wasn't his style, and it's very possible that she was the youngest daughter of a local farmer who was a celebrated drunk and therefore a member of the Tarbolton Bachelors Club with Burns. And the rather leading kind of circumstances that she talked about it for the rest of her life and said, yes, it was me, and after all, her name was Annie.
With small persuasion she
1790, Burns settled down to write a ghost story, and it was an instant hit. His setting was the old ruined kirk at Alloway, about a mile from where he'd been born, and which people still go on tours of today. And Burns had in mind a couple of stories that he'd heard about the church, and he had no trouble painting the picture of a local farmer called Tam, who goes to market in another town. He gets drunk in his favourite pub with his best friend, and then he has to get on his horse to make the ride home to his wife. Very excitingly, on the way home at midnight, he hears some unusual noises and sees some bright lights coming from the old church at Alloway, and he goes forward to investigate, even though the horse thinks better of it and would really rather go in the opposite direction. But they go, they look, and sure enough, what do they discover but a dance of witches. And then things get very exciting, and Tom gets excited as he possibly can about a young woman who is in the dance, and he loses his head, and then one thing leads to another, and the witches chase him all the way to the old bridge at Alloway. It's a bit of a cliffhanger, so can't tell you anymore. Scene 1 then, the pub. We thought we'd do this in the style of Scottish Western. When Chapman Billies leave the street, and drouthy neighbours meet, and market days are wearing late, and folks begin to take the gate, and we sit boozing at the nap and getting food and Uncle Happy. We think now on the lang Scotch miles, the mosses, waters, slaps and stiles that lie atween us and our hame, where sits our sulky, sullen dame, gathering our brews like gathering storm, nursing our wrath to keep it warm. This truth found honest Tam O'Shanter when he fae air, Éanach did canter. All there, while ne'er a tune surpasses for honest men and bonny lasses. Oh, Tam, had thou but been sae wise as ta'en thy ain wife Kate's advice, she telt thee well thou wast a skellum, a bletherin, blusterin, drunken blellum that frae November till October, ain market day, was never sober, that ilka horse was caught a shoe on, the smith and thee got roaring foo on, that ilka melder with a miller, thou satst as long as thou hadst siller, that at the Lord's house, even on Sunday, thou sat wi' Kirkin G till Monday. She prophesied that late or soon thou wouldst be found deep drowned in doon, or catched wi' warlocks in the muck by Alloway's all haunted park. Ah, gentle dames, it gars me great to think who mony counsels sweet, who mony lengthened sage advices, the husband frae the wife despises. But to our tale. A market night, Tam had got planted correct. fast by an ingle, blazing finely, with Raymond swats that drank divinely. And at his elbow, Suitor Johnny, his ancient, trusty, ruthy crony. Tam loved him like a very brother. They had been fou for weeks together. The night dray van with sangs and clatter, and aye the ale was growing better. The landlady and Tam grew gracious with favours, secret, sweet and precious. The suitor told us queerest stories. The landlord's laugh was ready chorus. The storm without might rear and rustle. Tam didn't mind the storm, a hustle. Care, mad to see a man sae happy, e'en drooned themsel among the nappy. As bees flee hame with lades of treasure, the minutes wing their way with pleasure. Kings may be blessed, but Tam was glorious. Our eye also alive, victorious. But pleasures are like poppies spread. You seize the flower, its bloom is shed, or like the snowfall on the river. A moment white, then melts forever, or like the borealis race that flit ere you can find their place, or like the rainbow's lovely form vanishing amid the storm. Nay, man can tether time nor tide. The hour approaches, Tam on ride. That hour, though night's black arts the key stain, that dreary hour, he months his beasted, and sick a night he taxed the rodent, as ne'er poor sinner was abroad. Last, the rattling showers rose on the blast. The speedy gleams the darkness swallowed. Loud, deep and lang, the thunder bellowed. That night a child might understand. The deer had business on his hand. We'll moot on his grey mare Meg, a better never lifted leg. Tam skelpit on through dub and mire, despising wind and rain and fire, whiles hadn't fast his gid blue bonnet, whiles crooning our some all Scots sonnet, whiles glowering round with prudent care, lest bogles catch him unaware. Calloway was drawing nigh, where guests and bullets nightly cry. By this time he was crossed the ford, war in the snow the chapman smoothed, and past the rocks and meikle stain, where drunken Charlie bracks neck bane. And past the birks and by the cairn where hunters found the murdered bear. And near the thaw, aboon the well, where Mungo's mother hanged herself. Before him, Doon pours all her floods. The Dublin storm roars through the woods. The lightning splashed from pole to pole, near and more near the thunder's roll, went glimmering through the groaning trees. Kirk Alloway seemed in a blaze. Through ilka bore the beams were glancing, and loud resounded mirth and dancing. Inspiring bold John Barleycorn, what dangers thou dost make us scorn. With tuppenny, we fear the evil. We who squeak by will face the devil. The swat say reamed and Tammy's noddle. Fair play he cairney deals a bottle. But Maggie stood, I could say astonished, till by the hand and heel admonished, she ventured forth unto the light, and vowed Tam saw an unco sight. Warlocks and witches in a dance, nae cotillons bred new frae France, but hornpipes, jigsters, bass and reels, put life and nettle in their heels. There sat all night and shake beast, Winnet bunker in the east, a thousand tight, black, grim and large. To gie their music was his charge. He screwed the pipes and got them scuttle, till roof and rafters all did dirtle. Showed the dead in their last dresses, and by some devilish cantrip sleight, each in his cold hand held a light by which heroic Tam was able to note upon the holy table a murderer's banes and gibbet airns, twa span-lang wee unchristened bairns, a thief new cutted frae a rape, wi' his last gasp his gobbed and gape, 5 tomahawks with blood red rusted, 5 scimitars with murder crusted, a knife a father's throat had mangled, woman's ain son o' life bereft, the grey hair stuck still to the heft, were mair horrible and awful that e'en to name would be unlawful. 3 lawyers' tongues turned inside out, we lies seemed like a beggar's clute. 3 priests' hearts, rotten, black as muck, lay stinking, vile in every nuke. As Tammy glowered, amazed and curious, the mirth and fun grew fast and furious. The piper loud and louder blew, the dancers quake and quaker flew. They reeled, they set, they crossed, they cleeked, till ilka carl and swat and reek it and coosed her duddies to the wat and link it at it in her sark. Oh, tam had they been quines plump and strapping in their teens. Their sacks instead of creasy flannin been snow white 1700 linen. These breeks of mine, my ainly pair, that aince were plush. Oh, good blue hair, I would have gained them off my haddies for a blink of they bonny birdies. But wither beldams, old and droll, rigwoody hags would speed a fall. Louping and flinging on a crummock. I wanted in the turn I stuck. But Tam Kinfit was with foo brawly. There was once a wench in Wally, long after, kenned on Carrick shore, for mony a beast to dead she shot and perished many a bonny boat, and shook baith meikle corn and beer and kept the countryside in fear. A cutty sark, o paisley hand, that when a lassie she had worn, in longitude, though scarcely scanty, it was her best, and she was vaunted. Oh, little kenned thy reverend granny, the sark she coughed for her wee nanny wi' 12 pund Scots. 'Twas all her riches would ever grace a dance o' witches. But here, my muse, her wingmon cour, sick flights are far beyond her poor, to sing how Nanny lapped and flang, a supple jade she was and strang, and how Tam stood like ane bewitched, and thought as very een enriched, een Satan glowered and fidged, full fain, and hotched and blew wi' might and main, till fast a caper, sign another, Tam tipped his reason altogether, and roars out, "Well done, Cutty Sark!" And in an instant, all was dark, and scarcely had he Maggie rallied, when out the hellish legion sallied. As bees buzz out wi' angry fight, when plundering herds assail their bike, as open pussy's mortal foes, when pop she starts before their nose, as eager runs the market crowd, when catch the thief resounds aloud, so Maggie runs, the witches follow, with mony an eldritch screech and hollow. Thou'll get thy fairing in hell will roast thee like a herring. Thy Kate in vain awaits thy coming. Kate soon will be a woeful woman. Now, do thy speedy utmost, Meg, and reach the keystane o'er the brig, and when there at them thou thy tail may toss a running stream, they daren't cross. But ere the key stage she could make, the feet and tail she had to shake. For Nanny, far afore the rest, hard upon noble Maggie pressed, and flew at her with furious ettle. But little wist she Maggie's mettle a spring brought off her rider hail, but left behind her ain grey tail. The Karen caught her by the rump and left poor Maggie scarce a stump. Now, why this tale of truth may read, ilk man and mother's son tak heed, when to the drink ye are inclined, or cutty sarks run in your mind, think ye may buy these joys, our dear. Remember Tam O'Shanter's mere. Neil Pearlman, who held it all together, and old Nick himself on the pipes, and Julianne, without whom we would be nothing. And now we've got one more little treat for you.
Only
whose birthday is it? Hand up. Joan, it's Joan's birthday. Okay, let's do a little birthday something.
Hold on 1 second. One second.
Elias has to get his truss on. Just give him a second.
It's not legal for me to be at liberty without this thing on.
Oh, and let me do a little side commercial, although I'm a little conflicted about this myself, because Jim Clyde has just pointed out to me that Dougie MacLean is appearing in Rockport on the 11th of April. So if there are any tickets left after you've got them, I'll have some too. But there you go. Dougie MacLean, who's just wonderful and well worth hearing, if you can possibly make it there.
Close to Perth.
Oh, I mentioned, did I mention Perth? Are you ready, Joe?